been through quite a lot one way and another through your lives. Have you individually or together considered suicide?
No.
No.
Why?
We've got more to live for than we've got to die for.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a thought that just pops into your head, and you always think, oh, for goodness sake, pull your head in. I always tell myself, that's a funny thing because I don't want to be dead. But obviously there must be a part of me somewhere that thinks maybe it should be. I don't know.
Life's what you make it. You've got to get out and have a laugh and pull people's legs, which we used to do. Being in the backcountry farm.
Oh, look, humour is the key. I mean, however awful things are, there always is, you know, a slightly humorous slant to it. For me, I mean, even if it's black humour.
Having been born a fifth generation to the land, farming was a natural thing that we took on. We took over from Mum and Dad, and when they got to close, I think, to their 70s, and we farmed for 46 years on the family farm, and that was my aim when I left there to come here, was to keep the farm going, even though it wasn't profitable at the latter end of my term there. We were just farming it away, in other words. The prices would be that fluctuating. You buy in calves and they'd be dear, and by the time they're ready to go in 18 months, 2 years' time, the price of beef would be down, and wool was the same. We used to rely on the wool for income. Of a latter year, it was just useless. It was actually costing us for time. We mustered the sheep in off the hills and had to do all the work over the year to get mount. We got off the wool. In fact, one year I got a bill for $2. So this is the trouble. You have a disaster like that, and 650 ewes, heavy and lamb, all dead. Well, you've got no income for several years, and you've just got to weather the storm. You can't buy anything, fertilisers or anything to really push the production or do anything, which is the main thing with farming. You just had to sit there, and it's been the downturn and everything. It just gets at you. I reckon I've gone through that times. That I just felt, what the hell am I doing here working? As Francis will tell you, I work 7 days a week, non-stop, and if you added up the hours I did, I did 9 or 10 in a week, because I could go and I could go contract baling and things at nights. Loose and hay has to be done at nights, and I've been known to work 25 hours in a day. Well, that's getting into things. One's a bit shy and the other one's too outspoken, I know.
Yeah, we know.
Well, we'll hear from the shy one. So tell me about what happened with your son.
Well, he was the third son, so he decided to get a job off farm because the other ones were taking it over, sort of thing. He did an apprenticeship in carpentering and he got through, and then he was living with Karen, and then they got married. But they would come up every weekend because they loved the farm, and Karen would say, he's grumpy, he won't talk to me. And we didn't sort of pick it up enough. But in the end, of course, 13 months into the marriage, Karen left, and that upset the apple cart. Owen, I had to take him to Nelson, to Noah 2. He got locked in a room by himself, and nobody could see him for about 3 weeks. All he wanted to do was kill himself. And I felt it wasn't a case of if, it was a case of when. Because he came home, they sent him home on a promise to the psychologist that he would come back on Monday for the weekend. I thought, how stupid are you? Anyway, I had to drive my car right up to the gun cupboard. He was a carpenter, he could have got in it, I'm sure, but to stop him, even opening that cupboard while he was home. He eventually got over that trip, and he came back and he lived by himself for a while, and then he got a flatmate in. One saviour was he didn't mind going to work. He always got up and went to work. It didn't matter if he'd been at the hospital the night before because he'd taken alcohol and pills and had his stomach washed out. He still went to work. He got a knife one day. He always rang us and said, "I've got a knife, I'm going to kill myself." This was one weekend. So this time I had to sign the paper and they had to go back to Nelson. It took a long time, but eventually he came back. But every time he rang up, I cringed. He was on a hunger strike. "I haven't eaten, I can't go to work today, I haven't eaten for so many hours," and all this sort of stuff. He tried every trick in the book. He eventually got over the stage where I thought, well, you're not going to kill yourself, but you always told someone before you did something. One day he came up to the farm and he took a gun back, and then of course he rang me from town and said, "I've got a gun." Oh, great. So I rang the cops. That wasn't very helpful. In the very end, it was tough love. I said, "Well, that's not my fault, Owen. You get on with it." And he apparently rang his sister and said, "Oh, Mum doesn't love me anymore." But after that, he picked up.
To get out of it, once you go into that depression, is a long, long way and damn hard on everyone.
For me, it was watching, I think the Hoggets going that's the only time that I'm aware that we have sold Hoggets, and that was just devastating because Ron and I had worked for years lifting the production and tightening the sheep breed up to how we wanted, and then to see your young stock go, that was a pretty hard day. We had a young bank manager coming out of the drought who was not very helpful and just kept putting pressure on, wanting 5-year budgets, and it was a very difficult time, and Ron got to the point that he didn't want to cope with him and I was just trying to deal with him, and in the end he got me in a corner, and luckily we had an extremely compassionate and caring accountant, and I rang him and he took it over and sorted him, and we got our needs met, and the next year we had this is 4 and 5 years out from the drought, we had a humdinger of a year and we were all back square again. I come from a family that's been challenged. My father was killed when I was 15. I had a brother commit suicide when I was 21. And Ron was with me through the suicide, and probably our first shock as adults was Ron getting lung cancer in his early 40s. And I think in a way that has helped us cope since, because you dig deep and you realise that if you come through something like that and you still have each other, if people can just realise that having their family and having their spouse supersedes a lot of other things, material things in life. I probably found it harder in that I was dealing with the farm with Ron, the 4 teenagers, and because Ron wasn't well enough to go out, I wasn't getting my social needs met, possibly. I did carry on. I was involved with guiding, and Ron encouraged me to carry on with that to try and keep my life a little bit in perspective.
You could say that we were depressed during the drought, but
it wasn't to the point that we needed a doctor's
intervention. We were able to talk it through between ourselves and manage that.
Fran, tell me who you are and what you do.
Oh, my name's Fran Halford, and I'm a doctor at Nelson Hospital Emergency Department.
Okay, just do it again and as though it's not a joke.
Oh no, this is going to be a challenge, I can tell. I mean, we kind of aren't at the bottom of the cliff, actually, because the poor paramedics and the police are really at the bottom of the cliff, because, you know, they see so many more suicides than I do, because they see the people that did it, right? So the people who've come to me have taken a swerve off the bottom of the cliff, and they've somehow miraculously survived. So people are often very upset when they discover that they're alive. Some people, conversely, are very repentant, you know, seeing this as an opportunity to have a second chance in life, are very grateful that they're alive. But the majority are just too sleepy or out of it to express anything to me other than, really. I mean, there's suicide in my family, you know. My uncle killed himself. And all my family suffer from, you know, or not all, but a lot of my family suffer from major depressive illness and have been institutionalised, and, you know, so it's this Celtic melancholia. Somehow I've inherited my dad's genes on that one. So I've got this perverse reaction where the worse things get, the more cheerful I get. Dealing with this part of society that's kind of quite hidden away, really. No one really talks about it. It gives me a lot of humility and a lot of gratitude for my life and just how good it is. And also insight into how easily you can fall off the perch. Yeah. And I think we've all thought at some time or other, it's just too hard, you know. Death would be easier than this. And looked at that tree and thought, I could just drive into that tree, you know. Or, you know, I mean, I think everyone, if they're honest, has had that feeling.
I used to wish that trees would fall on me and kill me. I used to wish cars would run off the road and take me out. It's hard to think back now and just remember how bad it really, really was.
You have the weirdest thoughts, like you'll be driving down the road and suddenly you might think, oh, I could just, if there's a truck coming towards you, I could just drive into that and it'll all be over.
There's no book on how to recognise, how to assist if there is a problem.
I always knew when I was getting quite deeply depressed because my breathing became shallow and I couldn't go and take a deep breath. And I never saw the sun. The sun was never out. It didn't matter if it was middle or summer. To me, the sun was never out when I was depressed.
Mainly the ability to lead a normal life that fits in with other people, and that can be timing issues, it can be sleeping more, seeking seclusion, not eating in a normal pattern, not interacting with people, ostracising people.
Being depressed is depressing, yes.
It is for other people too, I think. A person once said to me one day, God, it's depressing being around you sometimes. I think, yeah, maybe it's hard to be enthusiastic when you're depressed.
I would cry out loud when I was in the car, when I was driving down back roads where I knew there was nobody around, no houses. I would cry and scream and scream out loud, why are you gone? It's not fair. Why can't she come back? All this sort of stuff. And I thought I was crazy until I happened to be sitting on a plane beside another lady that had lost her son. And she said that she did the same thing. She had an area that she had to drive over a hill to get to her place in the country. And it was about 4 or 5 k's long. And she said that it was just once she got to the hill, it was her screaming time. And she used to scream all the way over the hill. So I thought, well, I'm not crazy. If I am, there's other crazy people out there like me.
Most of the time I just want to be alone and I can't be bothered with anything. All the things I love doing, I just can't do when I'm depressed. All my artwork. If I'm depressed, the hand won't work. It sounds really odd, but yeah, depression's pretty bad. I have no motivation at all when I'm depressed.
So
yeah.
what do you do when you're depressed?
Read, whinge to myself, good job, I'm alone. Cuddle the cats. Cats are good for cuddles. Yeah, just hang out by myself and just be a boring old fart, I guess.
There's been quite a lot of farm suicides.
Yes.
What's your attitude to them? How do you feel about those people who have committed suicide?
Well,
they're lucky they've left a mess.
yeah, yes.
They're out of it.
Words I was just trying to think of. I honestly think that they go there and they commit suicide. Everything for them is cleared up, but what they leave behind is a disaster. How is the wife supposed to get and work a farm when she's got other children? She can't do it. The farm's got to be sold. Then she's got to be able to get the kids to school. She's got to be able to change schools, and there's that many things that come into it once it does happen. It's not just the funeral.
If they thought about it, it would be totally different. No, they certainly don't think of the devastation that they leave to everybody. Everybody that's known them has an effect from the one thing that they've done.
I feel they have got trapped within until
they don't see the wood for the trees.
They're unable to see their way clear, and they think they've found the way out of their situation.
Well, I think they get to the point they can't see their situation. I've tried really hard to understand it, and I don't think there should be any stigma, and there should be full support for the families left behind, because they truly are the ones that have to deal with it.
We had planned a trip to Italy, and we never made it together. But I had friends who were going at the same time, and they said, "Look, come." So I did go, and I realised that when I came back, I was not only going to come back to an empty house by myself, but it was also going to be the 3rd anniversary of Marcus's death. And I thought, this is going to be a pretty bad time for me. So I just threw loads of seeds in the garden before I left, a lot of my veggies and things, so that when I came back I had this huge lot of stuff happening in the garden, lots of weeds too, of course, but it was something to get me outside and doing things. Just a little project, and it worked.
You learn to live with it. You learn to live you learn to live alongside it. It's like you learn to live with your leg gone and your arm gone, and you function with the parts of your body parts gone, and that's what it's like. For me, grief, depression, it's like living with parts of your body gone. You know it's gone, but you function, and you can function quite well. But it's gone. My leg's gone, my arm's gone, it's gone.
I was on antidepressants, but they make me feel dizzy all the time. Well, not all the time. Quite often I would feel quite dizzy, like you've had a few. And I suspected that that's what was causing it, so I went off them and I came right, and then I went back on them. When I went back on them, it was worse than ever, so I just stopped them. Now I don't take any antidepressants. Just take vitamin V tablets, V?
V? What the hell's V? I've never heard of vitamin V.
Vitamin B tablets. When I remember to take them, that is. I kept having thoughts about killing my favourite cat. That's how weird it was. My favourite cat, and it was devastating. Got to the point where I was scared that I was going to walk in my sleep into her room and kill her. So I went to the doctor crying and said that I was going nuts because I thought I was. And I told him what had been going on. He said, no, you're not nuts, you're just depressed. And boy, was I depressed. I rang Outreach and a lady came up and she helped me. Well, she gave me a few pointers on how to deal with my feelings and my thoughts and try to steer them away onto other things. Because like I said, if you start dwelling on it all the time, you just go down the gurgler. So you've got to, as soon as the thoughts start coming, swap them for something good. Watch TV, anything to get your mind off it. Yeah. See, my husband was involved in a murder-suicide, so that was movie material. There was everything in there: sex, violence. Dear. But no, not drug related. But on the day he was killed, Mum and my brother and I went and picked it. We were heading down there to the house to pick some stuff up, and Shane was supposed to have left the key out and he hadn't. And my brother was just breaking into the house when the helicopter arrived in the paddock. And sounds funny at the moment, at the time it wasn't. And all these guys in black got out and they run across the back paddock from our house and up through the pines up to the cow shed. And I knew then that Shane was dead. You just think, well, that's not something you see every day, is it? No. As you know, your whole world is turned upside down. Life was completely different. You kind of feel lost, but at the same time, I knew that I had to be strong for the kids, and so that's what you do. You be strong for the kids, and you kind of stuff it in the background. Although you think you're dealing with it, I was sort of dealing with it on the top, but I was still stuffing a lot behind. And when the kids left home, all the stuff I'd stuffed behind came up and kicked my backside. Yeah. And I got really, really depressed. I actually thought I was going nuts. But what was happening was all the grief was coming back, the grief about what happened to him. But I've been stuffing it, like I said, stuffing it down and not acknowledging it. Yeah. But that's the worst thing for me. I know if I don't deal with it, it'll come back to haunt me. Yeah.
We had to go up and shift some sheep, so Brian only had a two-wheel motorbike at that stage, and he had Stephanie, the eldest one, in front of him on the bike, and then I was behind him on the bike, and then I had the baby in the pushchair behind me. I put my hands behind to so we didn't lose him, and off we went up the road. I mean, we were the only ones that lived there. It was only a country road, so we pretty much knew if anyone was coming into our place. But you wouldn't do it today, would you? It would be very much frowned upon. And because we weren't silly, I mean, we just went very, very slowly.
No more than about 30 miles an hour.
Oh. No, the dogs had to keep up. I doubt whether it was that fast.
I had to speed up the heart bypass that took a fair bit of getting over. It took a lot of getting over. It's quite a devastating type of thing, really.
In what way?
Just the drugs, and you cut up here and they've sewn you up inside with, I think, the number 8 wire, for, you know, the old number 8 wire thing.
Oh, he went from very active to very inactive, and couldn't do a lot, couldn't do anything. And he did start coming right, and then he started going backwards, and that's when we found out that he had a lung problem. So they both had the same bad symptoms.
You know, some people come out of this, having this big operation, in a week they're away good. Others a fortnight, a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 1 year, 2 years. Some never come out of it. They just flop, you know. And I was determined I wasn't going to be like that, so I decided I just got to keep myself very positive. I did find it hard when I first came home from the hospital. My wife was going out to some sewing classes, learning quilting, and she went out every Monday night, and I'd be left at home on my own. It's a bit quiet, nothing much on TV other than I used to get on the telephone, ring up our relations, have a yarn with somebody, and after a while I started to come right, you know.
He's good. It was me that had to learn to handle it. He was just so slow, and I've always been fairly fast and doing far too much, and I just couldn't cope with having to stop and wait. He didn't like me tearing around. I suppose he knew I was doing it because he couldn't do it. And that's a bit sad, really. I told myself, this is our life now, and to come to terms with it. And
you've got to try and forget everything, have a laugh, yeah, and see people around you. Don't shut people out of you. Get your friends around, or try and get people coming in to see you.
What was the major event that has impacted upon your lives?
The suicide of our son.
Yeah, the loss. I spoke to him one day. I knew he was hurting, and you know, I said to him at the time, you know, don't worry. There's girls are like buses. There's another one coming along. Don't you two will come. Don't. But you know, I could see it was still hurting him, and he just pushed that off to one side. You know, just carry on with the day's driving.
He carried on with his work, and everything just carried on as normal.
His ex-fiancée at that stage paraded the new boyfriend, and in a hotel, local hotel, on New Year's Eve. Couldn't have been worse, and we feel at that point, with a bit of alcohol on board, and it comes back to alcohol, he, according to his mates, quietly left the hotel. And they thought he was going to just cool off. I mean, they were not alarmed at all. And he proceeded to
sleep.
Yeah. He was in the place I worked too. I mean, I cross it every day. I pass the spot every day, and yeah, there he was. And yeah, we checked. He'd left a note. Rang the local police, and knew the officers pretty well, so they were extraordinarily helpful as well. So yeah.
Is that you or me?
It's the bread maker.
Oh, it's the bread maker.
What was it?
Bread maker.
Oh, jeez.
How long is it going to go on like that for?
Stop. Surely. Is it?
About 5, that'll go, and then it'll just go like that, and then 5 minutes later it'll stop.
And here I found myself in the situation that my wife sitting out in the car waiting, and I'm on sticks, and on crutches, and I had to virtually, there was no easy way, and I just had to go and tell her. The local contractor wanted him to carry his coffin on the truck, his own truck.
There was just wall-to-wall people. This room was full of flowers. I dreaded seeing the florist come up the driveway. That's when everything started to really compact, because Andrew used to come in the back, he'd park his truck on the back street and come in the back door, and I kept waiting for that back door to open, and it didn't, and that's where it got really hard for me. And the thought of going out to meetings and things like that became quite strained. We just wanted to be at home.
Yep.
We just didn't want to
We sort of went
mix.
into the show. And
yeah, we sort of, that was the hardest part, just having the motivation to keep going. Because he's gone, but things carry on. The mail still keeps coming. People that don't know will come in and say, "Hi, how's Andrew? What's he up to?"
Friends were variable. Friends who I thought would have been not supportive were in fact incredibly supportive, and some who I thought would have been supportive weren't. We had one family we had very close ties with for a long time because they had two boys as well who were the same age as our boys, and we never saw them, and in fact they actively avoided us, which was very hard to take.
People avoid you. They often don't know how to cope with death, and they avoid you. So it was easier just to confront them, and once they've actually spoken to you the first time, they're fine. But people will walk across to the other side of the street rather than actually have to front you.
My heart goes out to all relatives of someone with a really, bad depressive disorder, because it's just so hard to know how to help. And a lot of these people, they're at the end of the road, right? They've been working with this person as a family member for years, trying to nurse them through it. And so some people, it's kind of resignation, oh, here we go again. Some people are furious with their family member and furious with life and the world, and everything seems so unfair, and I really understand that. Some people are very sad and take it very personally, can feel a lot of grief.
Yeah, I used to get extremely angry with people that would come up to me and say, "Oh, time's a great healer." I really want to turn around and whack them. Time's a great healer. That's just rubbish.
And I would get advice like, "I know you don't want to hear this, but it's going to get better." I could have just donged them on the head, and I wanted to say, and I never did say, "Have you ever lost a child to suicide?"
There are certain months of the year that are a lot harder than others, May being one of them. When you've got Mother's Day and you've got his birthday, and we have an anniversary, so the month of May is a bit difficult.
So for other people listening to this, who are depressed or considering suicide, any advice for them?
Don't.
In a word.
Don't do it.
To think of the people around them, the closest people around them.
What is it going to do to them?
Yeah.
What is it going to do to the people that love them dearly?
Don't lock yourself away and dwell on it, because that's not good. If you've got friends, get them to come to you or go to them. Ring outreach.
Well, first of all, realise you're not alone. Everyone has hard times. Everyone has really bad times. But there comes a, there's a point where it becomes overwhelming and it's interfering with your life, and you need to get some help sooner rather than later. And it really is okay. And there's this kind of staunch, she'll be right attitude in this country that I think is great to some extent. But there's some point where you can say, I'm not coping, I'm not doing well, I feel at risk, I can't carry on like I am. And probably the first person to go to might be a friend or a family member, or just talk to somebody. It doesn't matter, you don't have to make an appointment, just grab someone and just talk to someone as a first step. And then, your GP is a good port of call, because there's a lot of free counselling and a lot of support out there available, and all you have to do is kind of press the button. And there are so many people in this community who want to help you. So probably the GP is the first one to go to. You could call a counsellor, there's lots in Yellow Pages, and you can just pop along to see one of those. And there's a lovely group of people in Nelson region. And there's all sorts of other avenues of getting help. If you're really desperate, a lot of people just turn up to A&E. And I'm not saying do that, but at the end of the day, we'd rather see you than not see you if you're going to top yourself, because that's why we're there.
Try and go for a few new interests. Be with other people. Try and forget your life just for a short while. If you can get your brain thinking about other things, then you think, I didn't think about myself for half an hour or an hour.
Try and forget everything. Have a laugh. Yeah, and get people around you. Don't shut people out of you. Get your friends around, or try and get people coming in to see you.
Go and see your doctor and get counselling, because it's just such a horrible place to be in, and the sooner you can get out of it, the better. And if you do need medication for a while, take it. But not without counselling, I don't think. I think you really need to work things through.
Whatever makes you feel good, do it. Oh, within reason. Within reason.